Hey there, RC Girl here. Today we're taking a look at one of the latest additions to the very affordable Creality Ender 3 line. This is the Ender 3 V3 KE. Don't let the name distract you. This is a really great printer if you're looking to start 3D printing for the very first time and or expand your print farm on the cheap. This should definitely be at the top of your list to consider. For under 300 bucks, this one is packed with a ton of features that make it really accessible for a beginner 3D printer. This one has auto bed leveling, auto Z offset, wireless printing, 500 millimeters a second max printing speed. In this video, we'll talk about the main features of the Ender 3 V3 KE. We'll walk through the workflow of getting your first print with this and also take a look at some of my test prints. Make sure to stick around to the end. I'm gonna walk through some pros and cons to consider before picking one of these up. Let's get printing. Before we dive in, I want to say a huge thank you to our sponsor for this video, BetterHelp. We're going to get a little bit more personal in this video than I usually do on my channel. I'm pretty private, but I think this is a really important topic to share with you guys. I know for many of us, our hobbies and the communities around them are super important in helping to maintain our mental health. But sometimes you're going to need a little bit more support, and that's where BetterHelp can assist. For me personally, I'm actually going through some major life changes at the moment. I'm a little bit nervous to share with you guys, but hopefully by me being vulnerable here, it can maybe help somebody. So I'm actually separating from a 9-year relationship, moving away from the state that I grew up in, all my friends and all our animals. That's a lot to take on alone. It is a new year. Maybe you too are reflecting on making some changes in your personal life or thinking about what's holding you back from happiness. BetterHelp can connect you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice, whatever it is that you may be going through. With BetterHelp, you can have your therapy sessions as a phone call, as video chat, and even Messenger if you prefer. To get started, all you have to do is fill out a questionnaire that'll help them match you with a licensed therapist, in most cases within 48 hours or less. And therapy is so personal, so if the therapist you're matched with doesn't feel like a good fit, you can easily switch to a new one at no additional cost. I am really glad that we're moving away from the idea that going to therapy means you're crazy or something's wrong with you. That is totally not the case. Try not to cry. Jeez Louise. I was chatting with one of my RC friends recently, and she was actually a licensed therapist with BetterHelp. And what she told me that holding it all in is not what shows strength. Asking for help is. So if you feel you can benefit from therapy, you can click the link in the description box below or visit betterhelp.com/rcgirl. Clicking the link helps to support my channel, but also gives you 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. Thank you for letting me be vulnerable with you. I super appreciate BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. If you watch my channel, I'm into the radio control hobby, so a lot of my printing has focused on printing things like these scale accessories, this cool 1/10 scale surfboard, and this cool 1/10 scale trailer, which was actually like 37 pieces, my first ever 3D print project. I am pretty new to 3D printing myself. This is my second FDM printer, and this was definitely a low frustration experience. I've been testing this out for about a month now, have a bunch of prints on it, and we've been getting really great results. This is available on Amazon. It was shipped to me by an Amazon seller to feature on my channel. I will put a link in the description box below if you want to check it out. One really amazing feature is that it had a 20-minute setup time. Since the printer comes largely assembled, it is a super quick process to get it unboxed and assembled and ready to print. In the box, you'll get all the assembly hardware, a quick start guide, some stickers, tools, including a rod to unclog the nozzle, some flush cutters for snipping your filament and cleaning up your prints, as well as some grease for the rails. It also includes a thumb drive with the full manual, Creality print slicer software, as well as a Benchy test print. If you don't want to use the wireless function, you can also use the USB to transfer your prints from your computer to the printer. And they include a little bit of hyper white PLA filament. I'll link out to a step-by-step assembly process if you want to follow that. 3 basic tips though when assembling this: make sure that you are assembling it on a flat surface so that everything is aligned and comes together squarely. One thing I like is this printer is relatively compact, even though it is a bed slinger design where we have the bed moving around. It doesn't have a huge footprint, though you do want to have enough space to keep the bed from knocking anything. Second very important tip, make sure you set the right voltage There is a little slot on the side with a red switch that you can toggle to the left or the right to set the proper voltage. For the US, that's 115. Elsewhere, that's going to be 230. And then lastly, this is somewhat of a loud-ish printer. If you're putting it in a bedroom, probably not the best to be running your prints overnight, or you might not get very good sleep. All right, let's take a look at this printer and its features in more detail. For the price tag, it has really solid construction. It doesn't feel cheap. It has a solid metal gantry here, plastic base to keep costs down, nice rubber feet on the bottom to keep it stable. This is a bed slinger model compared to Core XY printers. With this one, the print head moves along our x-axis, the bed moves along the y-axis, and the gantry is along our z-axis. This has a decent build volume, 220 by 220 by 240 millimeters. A little bit smaller than the build volume of my Ender 5S1, but really will print most of the items that I'm interested in size-wise. Bed slinger models tend to be a little bit cheaper. They are harder to enclose, though I have seen people make custom enclosures for these. Here is our hot end. This is a component of the printer that melts the filament for extrusion. This printer is compatible with PLA, PETG, TPU, and ABS. Briefly, different filaments have different properties, including strength and melting temperature, depending on the use case. As a beginner, I definitely start with PLA. I use PETG for things that need to be strong, and TPU is the filament you'd want to use for flexible things, like this can hat. We have our filament spool up top here. The filament provided with the printer doesn't come with a spool, so it definitely got all tangled up during my first test prints with the Benchy. However, on a spool, had no issues with it. It has a filament runout sensor here. I thought this had to be tightened, but it actually moves around as the printer is moving, so you don't want that to be tight. Kind of a weird design, but it seems to work fine so far. We have our heated bed down here. It comes with a really nice PEI flexible build plate. It's magnetic, it has these two little notches. You can snap it right in place when you put it back on. I haven't really had any adhesion problems. The only time I had adhesion problems is when I didn't have my Z-axes set properly. Otherwise, prints stick really well to this. This comes with auto bed leveling, so there is a sensor. It'll automatically detect how off your bed is and compensate for that in your printing. Another great thing that this has that my other printer doesn't have is auto Z offset. So it has a pressure sensor and it's going to get your Z offset, or how close the print head is to the print bed, pretty spot on for you. You might have to make a couple adjustments at the start of your print, but it does a good job at getting it really, really close. Over here we have a really nice color touchscreen. This printer is using its own Creality operating system, which is based off the popular Clipper firmware. People have been calling it Clipper Lite. We'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges of this new operating system later on in the video. One thing I love about this comes with wireless printing capabilities out of the box, so you can send your printers wirelessly from your computer to the printer. We have two USB slots here on the side. You can use them for your USB thumb drive for transferring your prints, or connecting a camera and other sensors, which can be purchased separately. Because this is connected to the internet, you can also get your firmware updates wirelessly, which is really nice. This has a 500 millimeters per second max printing speed, which is twice the speed of my Ender 5S1. If you're wanting max detail like I am, you're probably not going to want to run your prints at 500 millimeters per second, but I've been getting really quality prints at faster printing speeds. All right, we talked about the main features of the printer. Now let's walk through getting our first prints. First, we're going to install our filament. This printer has a neat auto load and unload feature, so we're going to go into our settings and click on Extrude Retract here at the top. That's basically going to help you load and unload your filament. We're going to make sure our filament is cut at a 45-degree angle using the flush cutters provided from the printer. We're going to feed it through the filament runout sensor, pull down this tab here, and then we're going to slot that in. The auto loading feature will grab the filament and should be ready to go for you. Next, on our thumb drive has a pre-sliced Benchy boat. You don't have to do anything to this file. All you have to do is pull it up on the printer. This is a benchmark print that is dialed in for the printer that really showcases the fast printing speed, so they have it set super high. This one printed in 15 minutes, pretty impressive. So how did our benchy turn out? I'd say this turned out pretty dang good. The only thing that could use improvement is our overhangs. If you see these little dangly bits here, those are a bit sloppy, but we can definitely fix those by adjusting some of our print settings. It's going to be a balance of print speed, fan speed or cooling, flow rate, and temperature, among other things. You can do some calibration prints for overhangs and a lot of other things to dial in your printer. I'll link out to a video on calibrations. We're not going to go through that here, but definitely something you can adjust on your printer to dial it in. Pretty easy to print the pre-sliced benchy, but now we want to print one of our own prints. On our thumb drive is going to be the full detailed instructions manual for the printer. It also has the Creality print software on it, which is Creality slicer program you can install on your computer. After installing Creality print, we're going to add our printer. Select the Ender line and add the Ender 3 V3 KE. Select Add and click OK on the 0.4mm nozzle diameter. Next, we're going to set up wireless printing. Click on over to the Devices tab. You can auto scan or add the device using an IP address. You can find that over on your printer in the settings, clicking on the wheel and then network. Type that in manually, click Add, and you should be good to go with wireless printing. For our object, there's lots of different websites you can download free and paid STL shapefiles or objects, including Thingiverse, Thanks, Cults 3D, My Mini Factory, and lots more. We're going to print this thumb steer adapter we found on Thingiverse for my Traxxas TQI RC transmitter. After downloading and unzipping the file, we're going to open the object in Creality Print or your slicer software of choice. We're not going to go into a ton of detail on the software, but briefly, using the Tools tab here on the left, you can move the object around, you can resize it, you can select the plane that you want on the build plate. Typically, you want the nice surface facing up. Next, before we print, we're going to want to add supports to this object. The printer can't print in midair, and you see that there's overhangs here, so we're going to need to add supports by clicking over here on the left. This program auto adds supports. You can define the overhang angle. Typically 45 degrees is a safe number. There's a lot you can modify about supports. We're not going to cover that here. We're just going to keep the standard one and set the degrees to 45. On the right, we're going to select the high quality, which does thinner layers, more detailed prints. You can also go into the back end settings and modify a lot of different things like printing temperature, speed, infill, etc. This is going to be based on your filament and the object that you're trying to print. As you learn what each of these do and analyze how your prints are coming out, you're definitely going to want to go in and play around with all of these settings. People have a lot of different presets available online, so just do a little research. Now we're ready to click Slice. Up on the top here, we can click the middle Preview tab and use the slider to observe how the printer will lay down each layer. Lastly, we'll send this to the printer, clicking the Land button down here on the bottom. We can then pull up that print on our printer and we're ready to print our object. With getting the best 3D print from your printer, it's going to be a lot of print analysis, seeing how your prints turned out and going back to the settings and adjusting things. I do a lot of Googling and troubleshooting, and you can figure out how to adjust your back-end settings to improve your prints. First off, our thumb steer. This one, the supports were a little bit too strong, something we can adjust. It's always a balance of being strong enough to support the print, but light enough to remove them. After getting them all off though, this print looks really nice. I'd say it could improve also on the overhangs, looking at the bottom here. I also tried this in black PLA, sliced in Cura with different supports and levels of detail, printed in black in 0.1 and also 0.2mm layer heights. This print here, actually I ran out of black filament halfway through, and you can see when the printer stopped and when I had to reload the filament. You can see that in the layers here, but actually that part of the print is hidden, so it doesn't really affect it too much. Next, I switched filaments to a multicolored silk, one of my favorite filaments to print in. I printed this vase for the first time, really been wanting to do that. I tried spiralized mode or vase mode where there's no layer change, it just prints a single spiral all the way up. Pretty cool. It turned out seriously so perfect, and this filament is beautiful. I also printed a 1/10 scale surfboard, which I sell these in my Etsy shop, so I was really curious to see, can this printer do sellable prints? And this one turned out actually really nice. Only thing you can see is a seam here on the side. It kind of alternates between the left and the right. This is where the print head retracts to start another layer. There's a way to get that line all in a row. I'm gonna have to figure that out and how to adjust that in our print settings. But otherwise, this looks super clean, really, really nice. This could be a sellable print. Lastly, I printed a few scale accessories. The whole point of wanting to get this printer dialed is so I can print these really nice, tiny scale accessories for my RC crawlers. I printed all these for my Traxxas TRX4 Blazer. These jerry cans here were from Night Customs, my mini factory store. These fit together nicely. I actually used tree supports in Prusa. Kind of cool for the first time. These turned out really clean. This ladder I printed in 100% infill, so I printed it solid. Turned out really amazing. The roof rack here, I had to print this actually a few times, a few things going on here. The first time the corners were peeling up, and that is likely due to the colder room temperature or a draft while the print is cooling. As the print cooled, it warped the corners here. That's why people like to enclose their printers, because it can hold a more consistent temperature. Tried adding a brim to hold down the corners, and it basically makes a single layer on the bottom of your print. They're actually super easy to remove after, and that solved our problem. Except I had a couple layers separating on the top of the roof rack here. They actually cracked. I think that was an adhesion issue. Our layers weren't binding properly, so I upped the temperature by 5 degrees for the filament, and I think that solved our problem. I also printed this in 2 parts because of the size. Our bed size is slightly too small to print this in a single piece. And then lastly, I think one area where this printer struggled a little bit was on small, intricate designs, really delicate prints like this high lift jack from Night Customs. I tried different surfaces face up, but I still couldn't quite get it to print properly. It looks really nice, except for there's a little notch here where you can attach it onto the roof rack, and that just snaps every time. So I might actually try printing this in PETG, which is a stronger filament. That might solve our problem. But all in all, honestly, I am super happy with how all these prints turned out. I think you can definitely dial it in and get sellable prints from this printer if you're expanding your print farm. Pretty low stress, low frustration experience in learning how to use this printer. Again, this is my second printer, so I'm pretty new, and I had a relatively easy time learning how to use this. So after about a month testing out this printer, what do I see as some of the major pros and cons? First off, the sub $300 price tag for all the features it comes with. I haven't had any bed leveling or bed adhesion issues whatsoever with this printer. Less than 20 minutes to set up, super easy assembly. I also really like the Auto Z offset. I didn't have that on my Ender 5 S1, so I think for a beginner, getting your Z offset is so important. This makes it super easy. It gets it really close, if not spot on most times. Really love the wireless printing capabilities. A caveat there, and I guess this would be a con, is that currently the wireless printing capabilities only work with Creality Print. So if you use something like Kira and Prusa, right now, you can't use the wireless printing capabilities. Depending on when you're watching this though, they're actively working on that, so hopefully there is an integration soon. A couple minor cons. The fans are a little bit loud, at least for me, compared to the Ender 5 S1. Another minor thing, but you have to uncheck calibration each time you're starting a print. It does move around a lot, so you need a pretty stable base. And lastly, the print head homes very close to the bed, so it's really hard to clean the nozzle before a print. I think there's a way to modify the back end G code so that it'll home somewhere else, something that I have to figure out. Not a big deal, just something to be aware of. I think that's it. Hopefully this video helped you out, helped answer some questions, get you on your journey to 3D printing if you are a beginner. Thank you again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. I'll see you later.